I'm going to enjoy this because I've enjoyed some of our conversations, but I'm going to be learning some, so bear with me.
And hopefully you'll bear with me.
Of course, we will bear together on this, you know. So it's really a pleasure. Welcome very much to Conversations. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program George Sotirelis, and he's a producer at MNN now, happy to say, cable television producer, and he's a musician, and he has a very interesting story to tell that we're going to be investigating here on the program. And George, welcome very much to Conversations here in our mini studio on 36th Street.
Thank you, Harold. It's very good to be here.
My pleasure. You've helped me produce my program, so you could know I often ask the guests if they would share their own background. I would ask that of you. Could you share your own background, where you were born and raised, maybe some of your family background, some of your education, and then we'll get into a conversation about your life's experience and then also the human condition and things that are of concern to you. But could you share your own background, please?
Well, the background's mixed. I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Really?
A Navy brat.
Oh, yeah.
That's the term to use.
Yeah.
My parents were born in New York.
My
father joined the service, he was 17, 1944.
At the end of the war,
right.
Huh?
Served in the Pacific, Navy, 44, 45. They met, my father and mother met in Central Park.
I'll be darned. That's a romantic place to meet. Yeah.
But being in uniform in 44, 45, I think was a different time.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole government was trusted, the authority figures were trusted, the military was trusted. I think FDR was still in office.
Yeah.
So he died when I was 3.
I see.
So I try to imagine the culture that he grew up in was New York working class from the 30s. He was born in Washington Heights. Went to a parochial school, Catholic schools there. And I'm trying to imagine what kind of a person he was.
Yeah.
When I see all
you couldn't know him well, of course, at 3. No, yeah.
But by watching
photographs,
by watching old movies.
Yeah, they had some movies of him?
No.
No, old movies of the time, I see.
I was thinking of Jimmy Cagney comes to mind.
Yeah, I see. Right. Yeah. Jimmy Cagney comes to mind to personify that period. I think you were right. The whole nation was united in that war effort and so forth. It was difficult, but at the same time very uniting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I think of Vietnam. Vietnam changed a lot of that in the Cultural Revolution of the 60s.
Yeah. But Sotirelis, is that Greek, did you say?
Yes.
Okay.
His parents came from Greece around 1910, 1912.
I see, right.
And there was a lot of fighting in the Balkans at that time.
Sure was. They've been fighting in the Balkans forever, it seems to me, like from Caesar's time.
Yeah.
I think they called it Dacia, was it? I think in the Caesar's day. But
Dacia.
Dacia, I think, yeah.
Which is the modern day Romania.
Yeah, is it? Yeah, right.
And Romanian is a Romance language, in Latin.
Yeah.
And he came here around, my paternal grandparents came here around 1912. And many of the papers have been lost, but he had what do I remember about my grandfather? Well, from what I've been told,
yes,
he was a very hardworking man.
Yes.
Big surprise, he worked in the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
Greek? Yes.
At a diner?
I don't know. I think he was a waiter, maitre d'. He was I know that from what my grandmother tells me, he was continuously working.
Yes.
From the time he got here all through the 20s, through the Depression, through the 30s, he always worked. He died of a heart attack in 1951. I was born in 53.
53, okay,
right.
Yeah.
He was
it's
always
a little
working.
too high on the volume.
He was always working.
Yeah.
And he married my grandmother. She came from Canada. They met her in New York and got married.
That's your maternal grandmother?
Paternal grandmother.
Oh, paternal grandmother. Yeah, okay, yeah. But they were Greek and worked in it's interesting, the Greeks are associated with the diner, aren't they?
The diner? Well,
it's a great American institution, the Greek diner. I don't know where it would be without it, do you?
It was wonderfully parodied by Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
John Belushi, I think it was.
Belushi?
Cheeseburger.
Yes,
yeah, I
right.
remember that from the 70s.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, well, Greeks in general in the restaurant business, it's a big, that's not the only business they're in, but...
If I may, I hitchhiked through Greece in 1957 as a young man. I was in leave from university, and I hitchhiked actually from Europe all out through the Middle East and went through Greece. Right. It was wonderful. The people were so marvelous to me because I was just hitchhiking, a student with very little resources and so forth. And you go in a restaurant, you couldn't read the menu because it wasn't even Latin script. It was Greek. It was all Greek to me. And they would take you by the hand. And it was just in a restaurant out overlooking the sea or something. And they'd take you by the hand and they'd take you into the kitchen. And they would point because you couldn't talk. And they would point, this is the grape leaves and this is the this and this is that, what you want. It was wonderful. It was really warm and welcoming. It was really a wonderful remembrance I have of my time in Greece. 1957. I hitchhiked out through Greece and then through Turkey and then Syria and Jordan and then to Israel and then to Cyprus and to Lebanon and to Egypt and to Libya. Yeah, it was crazy. I was even crazier then than I am now, if you can believe.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a great trip. I learned a lot. But the people in Greece, it was so warm and welcoming, I just loved it.
What was the government in the 50s? Like,
I beg your pardon?
What was the government in the late 50s?
Darned if I remember. It was before the...
They had a king.
I think so.
Yeah.
I really don't remember.
Probably
I don't think I was paying much attention to the politics or anything much. You know, I was just soaking it all up as a young man, that's all. But anyway, the point being, in Greece they were so, well, people are good everywhere, but they were particularly warm and welcoming there. I remember that very fondly, yeah.
Egypt in the late 50s was Nasser?
Yeah, it was Nasser, yeah, that was Egypt. I got arrested in Port Said. It was right after the bombing of 1956, and I got off the... I don't want to go into me. This is about George Sotirelis, but yeah.
But what happened? I mean, it was after the Suez campaign.
Yeah, it was right after the bombing of Suez. Remember '56? So I went and I asked, and I had a camera. I was naive, is what it was. Young.
Oh, you had a camera?
I had a camera hanging on my thing, and I went and asked a guy. I'd seen I wanted the road that goes to Ismailia on the way to Cairo. And I went and asked a guy, and I said, do you know where the road is to Cairo? It goes right along the Suez Canal. And the guy looked at me. He was very paranoid, I think. And he called me, and they put me in jail. They thought I was a spy. And I wasn't concerned because I knew it was going to be okay. They didn't know what hitchhiking meant. They didn't know, they call it auto stop in Europe, but they didn't know what does that mean.
Right.
And they put me in jail, and then it had, finally an officer came, he said, you're crazy. And so he said, you shouldn't say you're an American if you're traveling here because there's a lot of hard feeling.
Yeah.
And so I started speaking Spanish.
Right.
Trying to.
Right.
And everything. And then the guy came and he asked me, he wanted to give me a private. A soldier to come with me to hitchhike to Cairo. It was really strange. I said, no thanks. But then he came, he stopped the truck and put me on. But that was, I just remember Greece very well. Anyway, so that your lineage is Greek then on your father's side, yeah?
That side. And my mother's side is a mixture of Spanish and German.
Okay,
and my grandmother came from
Canada, you said?
Right. German Canadian, and she married I'm not sure, my maternal grandfather was Puerto Rican.
Boy, you're Heinz 57. You got all kinds of mixtures in there.
So there's a lot of mixtures.
Yeah.
So whenever anyone asks me for my nationality, which happens once in a while, I just say Greek.
Right. It makes it easy, yeah.
So there's some Spanish in there, and there's some German and Greek. But most of the families passed away.
Yeah, I
and
know.
There's not that many left. There's some left on my mother's side, but on the father's side, there's only one person, and that's it. So, but these things happen.
That's the way it goes. Yeah.
And I haven't thought much about them in the past few months. Because of this television project I'm involved in. Yeah, you're involved now over at MNN, right?
Right. You're doing television production over there.
Which happened accidentally, and someone mentioned it to me, so I went over there for the orientation. And
next thing you know, you were enlisted.
As you know, they have 3 tracks: Express Studio, General Studio, and editing, camcorder. And I thought, why don't I? My first thought was not to continue, just go to the orientation. That would be it. But then I said to myself, why don't you try to embark upon a project that you never thought that you might do.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the time, and you live not far away, so let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's a good general attitude to investigate things in life, I think, yeah.
And so I took the camera course, worked in some shows, took the controlling course, did that in April '05, and now I'm sitting here.
There you are, sitting here being a guest in front of the camera. This is the first time in front of the camera for you?
No.
You've been in the... He's one of those stalwart people that works in the control room, makes sure the programs work, and he helps me, and I really appreciate all that good help and concern. You're learning all the time.
Well, yes. Well, thank you for that.
No,
and,
true. I mean it, yeah.
It's a lot to know.
Yes,
it's a lot of tech, but now well, I'm beginning to see, I haven't hit that area yet, of creativity versus the technical part.
Yeah, you get the technical part done, then you can start branching out into the more creative. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, right.
And,
you want to get that, it's like playing the piano, I guess, sort of.
Yeah. I remember reading most of a book a classical pianist wrote. And I forget his name, and some classical pianists would give a great, when they're critiquing a pianist's performance, some pianists, they would say he gave a great technical performance.
A great what?
Technical.
Technical, yeah.
All the right notes. But then, the difference is that there's other pianists.
Yeah.
Not only they make some mistakes technically.
Yeah.
But the creative, emotional part was there.
Yeah, right.
And that's what the really interesting performance is.
That's what you're wanting to get to, right? Or you're getting there?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there, and I read a book called This Is Orson Welles. It was Peter Bogdanovich interviewing Orson Welles. And I remember there's a lot of good quotes in it. But Orson Welles said to Peter Bogdanovich, I can teach you the technical part in one weekend. But the creative, that's something you really can't teach that.
You don't think you can? Maybe it's genetic, do you think, that people have a knack for it, or it's like an artistic, something you're born with, or something?
I think it's something you're born with.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
I don't think, I mean, schooling, good funded schooling can help, encourage, provide a good atmosphere.
That's, again, learning the technical things.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone that has that natural creative talent, if they're not exposed to the schooling and to the music and the piano and the guitar, they may not be able to examine their creative potential. That's why we should increase funding for music and for the schooling. Education is terribly important, very important.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it can be taught. So that's a
the creative part, you can teach things that you have to learn to read, you have to learn the alphabet, that kind of thing. There's certain things you have to learn. A lot of attention is put on it. And then there's a term I like, it's called autodidact. Have you ever heard that term? I've used it.
It's self-taught.
It's self-taught. It means that you're taught and that you've got curiosity. If you're really curious about something, you're going to go run that sucker down like a hound dog after a fox or something, because you're really curious. And then you'll really learn by what it is you really want to do, rather than some list of rote things you're supposed to learn, which I think, I'm afraid, too much education is in that pattern with people saying there's something you must know. But really, it's getting a little absurd because there's so much to know, and you know, it gets a little bit. Anyway, what about your education?
You have to know the basics.
Yeah. Now, how much of it is learning the basics? You learn the basics the first 80 years of your life, and then you're ready to fly. Or how long do we have to go to school and be taught by school marms what it is we really have to know? As they get more and more knowledge in every field, everybody thinks you have to know everything they know. You know, it's a problem. Information overload. But what do you think about education? And what was your educational pattern?
Well, I went to 2 years of university.
Where, if I may?
I went to Columbia University.
Columbia.
But I didn't finish, and I hope to finish. Actually, I was supposed to go back to finish my education this summer, but the television project is what I'm really working on now.
I see,
But I want to go back and get my degree, even though I'm in my 50s. I think it's a great idea.
Good for you, why not, A
very important thing, education never stops. If you think about
it's absolutely true.
I mean, there was a woman that was something like 75 or 80 years old and got a degree from the New School.
Good for her,
So I have this plan to go finish my bachelor's degree, get my master's degree, and just to continue And then,
Now, you said you had 2 years in university.
yeah, I was
You-
studying history.
You did history.
Right.
A lot of it.
Yeah. History, reading. I was going to major in history.
Yeah.
And there was various reasons why I didn't continue.
Yeah.
A lot of, there are some people that don't finish, but
Yeah, sure.
I think it's a good idea if I'm very much interested in history and economics
Yeah.
and music.
And music, you got
Right.
you down as a musician. We want to
Yes.
get to that.
I play the conga and learning the piano.
And what?
Learning the piano.
You're learning piano.
Yeah.
You're picking that up now,
Picking it
or
up now.
at this advanced age for that?
Yes.
You didn't take the lessons when you were 8 and
No,
9?
no, I didn't take lessons when I was young.
Uh-huh.
I'm in a band,
Yeah.
and I haven't been with them that much in the past 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
But starting in August, I'll be with them again,
Yeah.
and I hope to bring the band over to M&N
Good idea. Come and put it down on tape, huh?
to have them taped.
What kind of music is it? Salsa or
They
what?
play some rock and roll,
Rock and roll.
folk music.
Uh-huh. And you
And,
do the conga in
I
that?
do the conga and
Uh-huh.
learn the piano.
How long have you played the conga?
A year and a half?
Only, yeah? You didn't play it before that?
No, no. I had when I was growing up, there was no musical instruments. There was a lot of books in the house.
In your house?
Right. My
There
mom stressed reading,
Right.
but there was no music. But I read a lot,
Uh-huh.
and I hope to continue with that.
And the family had was it intellectually stimulating, the conversation?
No, I gotta admit,
thing?
no. My mother encouraged education, and she wasn't a reader herself, but she encouraged me. She always had books in the house. It was pre-cable. I didn't watch much television
Yeah,
back then.
okay,
In
uh-huh.
the 60s. And I remember reading a lot, and I was alone a lot.
You were alone?
Yes.
Alone.
I didn't
uh-huh.
have a lot of playmates, so I had to invent stuff.
Now, you're being raised in New York? Where?
Yes,
Yeah, okay. Right. Which part?
Manhattan and the Upper West Side,
Uh-huh.
and Park Slope, Brooklyn.
Uh-huh.
The Upper West Side at that time was very different.
What part of the Upper West Side?
110th and Broadway.
Okay, right. Near Columbia.
Right, 108th Street.
Yeah.
We lived at 86th Street in Central Park West.
That's great.
This is way before gentrification, pre-Starbucks.
Oh, really? Pre-Starbucks. You lived in a
Pre-Starbucks.
pre-Starbucks era.
Pre-Starbucks era.
Yeah.
There's no cable.
Uh-huh.
Way pre-digital.
Yeah, I know. Everything's coming so fast now.
I mean,
yeah.
I've met some producers that are not all that familiar with the digital environment, and they're learning. Editing back then was the old style editing.
Were you doing editing back then?
No.
I see.
I
Right.
remember being interested in movies a lot.
You were interested in movies?
I watched a lot of movies.
You were a movie buff?
Yes.
Really?
When I went to movies a lot,
Uh-huh.
so a lot of foreign films. At that time in New York in the 60s and 70s, you could pretty easily, they had like what they call art houses.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thalia
and,
and stuff, yeah.
You could see 2 features.
Yeah.
And, I saw a lot of foreign films. I
And
remember-
did you watch it critically? You know,
Yes.
they teach people how to read,
Right.
but they don't teach courses on how to look at multimedia. You know, edits,
Right.
cuts, things, sublimation and that kind of thing.
Right.
I think there should be more attention to that because things are becoming electronic, and film was the precursor of television and that sort of thing.
That's
You
right.
watched it critically,
Yes, I
like a
noticed.
director's cut or something.
Yeah, I noticed
Uh-huh.
right away there was a difference between the way the Europeans made their films and the way the Americans, Hollywood made their films.
Yeah,
And even though there was no formal education, no film education, I was reading a lot.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I heard you say that before. There are a lot of books around the house.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I noticed right away that there was something very, very different about the European films, especially the Italian films.
Yeah,
Number
Italian.
8 and a
Fellini,
half.
did you like? Yeah, 8 and a half. Yeah.
Had there was a great scene that Marcello Mastroianni, I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm pronouncing that correct, he became like, wow.
Yeah.
Marcello Mastroianni, Yves Montand,
Uh-huh.
Alec Guinness. Those three.
Alec Guinness was great. Wasn't
Yeah.
it funny? That was English.
The Man in the White Suit.
Yeah, wasn't that funny?
I love
that was,
that movie.
That was such British humor. It's so
Yeah.
funny. And the Lavender Hill Mob.
The Ealing Studios. I remember a lot of films that
Uh-huh.
they had the Ealing Studios were made at Pinewood Studios.
Uh-huh.
I remember there's a great scene, and I think it's Marcello Mastroianni. He's playing Fellini.
Uh-huh.
He's playing the Italian film director. He wants to be interviewed, and he's crawling under a table. He's hiding and crawling under a table, and he's speaking in Italian. He doesn't want to be interviewed.
Uh-huh.
And a woman all of a sudden walks out in English, and she's staring directly at the camera. And she says, "He has nothing to say." It's one line of English.
Yeah.
In 8½. And I think it's the final scene in 8½. Was where Mastroianni's mentor, who's his professor, writer, intellectual.
I don't remember now.
Yeah, and towards the end of the film, Mastroianni character is having doubts about his life, what to do, is his life of any value. He's a journalist that has to do with paparazzi.
Yeah.
He's chasing people around with his group of photographers, taking pictures of people and interviewing people. But his mentor commits suicide.
Oh dear, yeah.
And this causes Mastroianni to have these doubts. And at the end of the movie, there's this great party scene, and then everyone's walking towards the beach. And towards the last scene, Mastroianni is sitting on the beach looking, and there's a young girl in the restaurant across the way yelling something at him. And he's going like this, like, what?
Right.
What? That's the last scene.
Yeah.
And then there's a fade.
Yeah.
I don't know why I just mentioned this.
No, it
movie.
sticks in your mind cinemagraphically.
Yeah,
I mean, these things stick in my mind. Whole scenes that are emotion, or things that are just gestures and stuff, stick in my mind. I remember things and hang things on that, you know. And that you're the same, right?
That struck.
I once did a program here with a woman named Alexandria Fuller. We did it here. She was sitting here, and she had written a book called Scribbling the Cat. And the Los Angeles Times had said of her writing that she was one of the best writers, one of the best 10 writers of the last decade of the English language. She wrote beautifully. And she ended, I could ask you about that film and writing and so, but she said she thought all writing should be cinematographic. So you have a cinematographic sensibility because the cinema, I mean, because we didn't have, it's only 100 years we've had cinema or any kind of way of putting things down other than by
writing.
What, painting, or then
painting,
we had
sculpture,
script, we had writing then, and we got, but now we got this thing where it's the multimedia is really, really important because it's getting close back to a multi-sensorial relationship to the world being presented through the media that is close to the way we experience as we walk through the world. In a way, you know, I don't know. But, so have you ever thought about trying to write or put together a narrative piece of film, like a film, please, maybe a short story or something like that?
Yes, I was in this theater group.
Yes.
And I was one of the actors in the theater group.
You've done some acting?
Yeah.
You like that?
Yeah, well, it's something that I never expected to do, being on stage.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we missed some years there because you were 3 coming from Honolulu, and then all of a sudden you were at university.
Right.
And now you're up now. There must have been a lot of activity going on. Was that mostly all being done around New York? And you
schooling was all New York, Catholic schools. I was a very quiet kid.
Quiet, loner, fair to say?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Straight A student.
Straight A.
Read a lot. Very good student.
Liked school? You liked school?
Yeah.
Okay.
I liked school. Oddly enough, I spent 3 years in a military high school.
Why would that?
I don't know.
How did that happen? I mean, that was your mother?
Yeah, she moved from New York to St. Petersburg, Florida. For 3 years.
Was that sort of martial-like?
Yeah, that
or
was like
marching around and stuff? And
yeah.
How'd you like that?
Not at all. And, it was an odd transition. I spent the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade there.
Oh, dear me. Uniforms and everything?
Yeah. And
See here, Private Hargrove, yes.
And then I went from that atmosphere, we abruptly moved back to New York. And this had to be in '72.
Right.
And right away, I went from a very conservative, rigid atmosphere to an extremely liberal, open atmosphere.
What was that? Where was that?
We moved to
Greenwich Village.
Yeah, we moved to the Greenwich Village.
Oh, really? I just came up with that.
No, it's true.
You went right into, and it was just right around the corner of Bob Dylan and Company.
We lived there for a little while, but then we lived
right out of the military academy. Yeah.
But we also lived on the Upper West. It was.
Yes.
It was amazing. And you just haven't mentioned, but that wasn't the only place we moved there for a while. We also moved back to the Upper West Side. And she moved around a lot. And,
oh, your mother? Now.
Yeah.
Yeah, right,
and
right.
She took me with her.
Uh-huh.
And I had no idea why she moved around so much.
Well,
but
yeah.
again, I haven't thought that much about it in the past.
Now I heard you say that she bought and had a lot of books in the house, but
Yes.
she didn't particularly, it wasn't a particularly intellectually stimulating
No,
environment
I
around the
didn't-
dinner table and that sort
No,
of thing?
I mostly, she didn't do a lot of reading herself. She wasn't interested in music.
She was interested in it for you and for
Yes.
the children? Were there other siblings?
No.
No, just you?
Just me.
Just you and she?
Right.
Oh, that would have
And,
been it.
and at that time, there was a lot of relatives, so they would come floating through.
Yeah.
But none of them were, there were no musicians, there were no writers, but just the books. What I remember from my childhood was the books.
George, there are a lot of books.
Right.
You never hear the term another big fat tome, huh, Mr.
Yes.
Gibbon? Yeah.
Right.
And there are a lot of books. What kind of books were there in the house? Because there's all kinds of books.
Right.
So what kind of books were they?
History.
A lot of history.
Fiction. Conrad, I remember. Joseph
You
Conrad.
like Conrad, right?
Yeah.
Heart of Darkness.
Dickens.
Yeah. Dickens.
Right. Heart of Darkness made a big impression on me. So like Heart of Darkness.
Yeah, right, yeah. Vachel
Lord,
Lindsay, do you ever get into Vachel
No.
Lindsay's poetry? Okay, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Lord Jim was another book
Yeah.
that made a big impression on me.
Uh-huh.
I read a lot of Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. I discovered the Loeb Classical Library.
The what?
The Loeb Classical Library.
Yeah, right, okay,
And,
right, yeah.
So I started reading.
And you were just doing this on your own?
Well, I would ask my mom to get me these books, and she would get them, and I would discover things on my own.
Uh-huh. You
And,
were autodidactically inclined,
I
perhaps?
maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't play a lot with other kids.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes she would let me play with with the other kids.
You weren't athletic?
No, no. I
Uh-huh.
was on the baseball in high school. In the military high school was a baseball, if I remember. Track. I was good at track.
You could run?
Yeah, I was a runner.
Long distance or short
I was
sprint?
good at long distance.
The loneliness of the long distance runner.
there's
Are
a
you
movie.
familiar with
There's
the
a
film?
movie. Tom Courtenay
Tom
starred.
Courtenay. It was a great movie, didn't
Yeah.
you think? I thought it was great. Yeah, I love that movie. Or The
and-
King of Hearts. Did you ever see The King of Hearts? With Alan Bates? That's a great movie about, well, never mind, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember.
But, yeah, so you're reading literature and you're reading history.
And plays.
Plays.
Right.
Science? No.
Yes,
Mathematics? No.
some
Chemistry, physics in high
Chemistry,
school?
physics, no.
Okay,
Mathematics, yes. I was into the history of mathematics.
Yes, right.
The history of it.
That's what history, you got so much history, the history of mathematics, the
Yeah.
history of science, of chemistry, of
Right.
politics, you know, it's a very all-encompassing thing, history.
Right. What struck me was the degree of specialization in the 20th century, because I'd read about the history of 15th century, 18th century philosophers, mathematicians,
Yeah.
and they would be expert in they would be knowledgeable in more than one field.
Polymath.
Right.
Yeah, I like that, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And by, early part of this century was specialization, the exposure of knowledge.
Well, maybe, yeah. It's all gone that way. It's all it's gotten worse, I think, worse
Right.
along that specialized line. I have a hero, Bucky Fuller. You've heard me talk about
Yes,
him.
yeah, I've never read him, yeah, but...
Well, he was a polymath, a comprehensivist, and he had said, dare to be a comprehensivist, that is, be interested in patterns between all the disciplines rather than burrowing in depth into one.
Right.
And he used to say that he thought the creation of graduate schools,
Right.
I don't know if it was apocryphal or something, but he said he was funny.
Right.
And he was also gorgeous and everything, but he said, that the pirates that run the world,
Right.
they consciously set up graduate schools
Right.
to get the best minds coming up so specialized out on, like I've used the example in programs on the use, you'd write a dissertation on the use of the pluperfect tense in 13th century poetry in the very far southeast of France or something, and you get so specialized out that you can't think about the whole and ever become a threat to those that are running things.
Right.
Divide and conquer was the term they used in colonial British experience around the world. But I don't know, there might be something to that, you know.
I think there is.
Yeah.
So he didn't like this narrow specialization.
No, he didn't. He said, dare to be a comprehensivist. Be comprehensive. Look at the patterns and try and see the big picture and a certain kind of, and it used to be like that more, education. It used to be political economy and things were blended, but they got so specialized out. And I think very, and quantum mechanics and physics got very specialized out, but everything is, as the Vedics have told us, a seamless web. It's all one. There are no academic disciplines in reality, really.
Yeah, and
you know, it's just a convenient breaking down of things for understanding. But anyway,
yeah. And well, and we live in a very, very structured society. So you know, advanced a degree. Also, I read somewhere where the action, any action that anyone takes affects everyone else. I don't know about that, but
or the butterfly wing affects everything. That's a thing of ecology, and it's an amazing world. It's amazing that anything exists. The world is amazing to me.
Yeah, the people. Well, maybe that's why we have religion. But if you are very religious, then you can believe that God is taking care of everything.
Yeah, you're not.
I don't know.
I know. Okay, that's. I think that I don't know stance is probably a pretty good one to take in a lot of things.
I mean, all the religious fanaticism in the world today scares me. So But I grew up in a religious school.
I heard you say Catholic.
Catholic schools, right? And
was that military school in Florida, Catholic?
No, that was an interlude. That was an interruption.
That was your furlough from the nuns?
My furlough from, I remember the nuns and the brothers and the lay teachers. But when I came back, as I mentioned earlier, I came back to a very liberal environment. I remember, I left out
plunk into another environment. That would be really, I remember, shake you up.
I did go to school one year, I forget, in the 8th grade. I left the South, which made an impression upon me. I went to the school of a Cathedral of St. John the Divine.
Oh, really?
In 8th grade. And I sang in the choir there, but then my voice broke. And at that time, it was all boys. Way back, I think it was a boarding school, I think, back in the 40s and 50s. When I was there, I think it was 1968. It was an all-boys day school. Now it's co-ed, but I remember the cathedral. Inside the cathedral.
It's the largest cathedral in the world, I think. Yeah.
Started in the 1890s.
And a work in progress.
Right. They haven't completed the roof yet, but they had a fire.
Yeah, they did,
A while back. And I visited the cathedral recently, and it's impressive. It's incredible that they would build these cathedrals in Europe.
Take 400 years or something.
Yeah, 1350, 1400.
Yeah.
And it would use up the resources of the entire town, the entire county back then. So that was a truly religious age.
A lot of those Gothic cathedrals or something, Chartres and that kind of thing. Have you been to Europe or been able to visit?
No, I've been to Israel. I lived in Israel 2 years in the late 70s. And that made a great impression upon me. I mean,
could you talk about that? In the late 70s, you said?
Yeah.
What prompted you to go to Israel, if I may? I mean,
probably I had the opportunity to do some work over there.
Yeah.
I worked in a publishing company.
You were working in a publishing company?
Yeah, just doing office work. And I wanted to go, you know, it tied in with my interest in history. Yes. Religious history and military history.
Those are the two things you particularly been
I liked religious and military history. I was always curious as to why people had wars. I mean, I could see.
I know.
I guess if your neighbor has a lot more than what you want. And you feel strong enough just to go take it. Yeah, it's like Mafia Don or something. Yeah. Protection rackets and stuff. Yeah. And if two peoples are both claiming the same piece of land, various reasons, and you can't come to a peaceful agreement about how to dispose of the land. Yeah. Well then, I guess the way to avoid war would be a compromise. But some people don't want to compromise. Yeah. So they fight it out. They duke it out. That's what's been one war after another. They had 30 years war over religious principles, and they're still fighting over things in Kosovo that go back 1,000 years. Right. Staggering. How long the memory is, and the vengeful attitude, and all of that kind of thing. Exactly. It was funny thing you mentioned that, because I think it was last week. It was the 10th anniversary of the massacre of Srebrenica. Yes. Yeah. there was like 9,000 Muslims killed by the Serbs,
Yeah.
and it was the worst massacre in Europe since the end of World War II, and occurred in 1995. So I think it was in May of 1995. So it just struck me, I mean, they're doing now what they were doing 500 years ago. So.
Yeah, one of my favorite lines is, James Joyce, you would be familiar, I'm watching the program I tape, is, the history is a nightmare.
Right.
From which I'm attempting to awaken. I don't know if we'll ever get beyond the point where the term, if there's some basis in material scarcity and the need to benefit one at the expense of another,
right,
which has been the condition in which evolution of our species took place, and I think probably at the long haul, we're back in the early stages. If we've been here 200,000 years,
right,
probably most of that time was spent running around, running away from leopards and things.
Right.
We were probably prey and so forth, you know, to them and so forth. But anyway, but if we get over that, that we may get to a point where we'll be able to transcend the causes of war.
Right.
And it seems to me we have to do it pretty soon, because the weapons are now so powerful that if they unleash them like we've been doing with regularity, alarming regularity throughout history, it would mean, they tell us now, it could mean the end of our whole species, which makes this an interesting time. We may have to come to the terms by which we are going to achieve a lasting qualitative new condition that we would call peace.
Yeah, and
perhaps.
And the elimination of nuclear weapons.
Well,
I don't know. I'm not sure if they're even still constructing them. Are they?
Well, there are weapon systems that do exist, and I think they are. And the systems are still there to where, if they were to be unleashed. And then we got new ones coming on the horizon with biological weapons, germ warfare, and these kind of things are there.
Right.
That apparently, Monsieur Kako, I'm not sure if you did that program recently with him, he studied with Edward Teller, and he said we have weapon systems that, if they were to be unleashed, it's not like an inflection point from theory of relativity to 1905. You could project that we are going to have atomic bombs and hydrogen bombs and things. But they actually exist. The systems exist. And apparently if they would go off, it could mean the end of the species. Apparently we crossed that line about 1970. And those systems do exist as a reality, on an existential challenge that exists as a reality that has not been the case throughout human history. We could destroy the tribe in the other valley, or a good part of the other nation, Dresden, firebombed and so forth, and something like at the beginning of the at the turn of the 19th, 20th century, I think it was something on the order of, for every military death of the young men fighting out in the meadow, there would be 9 military deaths for every 1 civilian death. By the end of the century, measuring out the 20th century, it was 9 civilian deaths for every military death.
Yeah.
Which, because with the firebombing and the weapons of mass destruction, collateral damage, it really is sort of a nightmare. And so, are you optimistic for the human prospect? And also, we want to get back to what you learned in Israel, because you were drawn there by your own inclination. I'd be curious what you found and what drew you there and what you found. But
well, I'm optimistic.
Okay.
I mean, you have to be optimistic. What I have is a lack of, I'm following current events, but what interests me is that they have to eliminate the nuclear weapons and simply stop this research they're having in weapons. And now with the breakup of the former Soviet Union, what happens to all their nuclear weapons, all the nuclear stuff, all the biological stuff? I mean, I don't know. I mean, have they been selling it, or I mean?
I don't know. There's an awful lot of stuff knocking around from the Soviet Union, you know, and
what groups for political reasons want to use it,
Well, what has it? Now, some people say human nature is inherently greedy, selfish, nasty, brutish, and all that, and that they will take the attitude that's human nature.
Right.
But if we get to a situation where there is enough, maybe it is materially based. There's not enough, and it had to be that you had to grab stuff for yourself and the people you represented so that they would survive, and that meant the others would not survive, and it was a zero-sum grab because there was not nearly enough. You had to fight to protect your kids or your nation or something and build up. and then maybe we get to be where there's enough for everybody, even ecologically appropriate. It's some end game or end game situation that may be the adverse side of the destructive scenario would be that we've come to a transcending scarcity or something that would make the conditions that lead to war and destructive and nasty behavior redundant or unnecessary or something.
I think that's a theory about how warfare started.
I think
warfare didn't start until people became agriculture, you started settling towns, and if you had, like, say, more grain, if your group of people were starving and there was a plenty in the other town, then they took your grain.
They would come and if they conquered you, they could kill you and they could take the grain and.
Well, we don't have to do that nowadays. I mean, we have the technology. No one really, has to be hungry.
It would seem that way. We have
we
certainly
the
the
capability.
But we have a capability that our systems don't allow us to realize. We know how to not to prevent or treat, let's say, the worst examples of the scourges of AIDS and other kind of things, but we don't have a system that lets us do what we know and have the knowledge base and are capable of doing, because the economic and political systems will keep us short of being able to realize our full potential. That's schizophrenia in a certain kind of sense.
Right.
That there's something wrong.
Political and military.
And well, the military are all tied together,
look at how much money is spent, U.S., Japan, Britain.
Yeah.
Still Russia on
China.
On military.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Tens and trillions of dollars.
Yeah, I suppose. And that's been the leading edge of the technological experiment. That's what they will back.
True.
It gives them power.
Yeah. The spin-offs from the military research has helped. Maybe it's helped us improve our standard of living.
Well, maybe so. It's got, and it's just amazing time to be alive now, because it's been such a long time. And I think that's a significant thing that we've crossed. We've crossed that line where we can destroy the whole species.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it in the past. We were protected in our impotence, in a gestating kind of way.
It's interesting that we have the ability to destroy ourselves, but at the same time, from my reading of history, say, and of what my relatives told me, back in my grandfather's day and my great-grandfather's day, there was a saying that I remember my grandfather used: if you don't work, you don't eat. And back in his day, there was no social safety net. I think Bismarck put some of that in the 1880s.
I think they did too.
But his motivation for helping his German workers was to prevent a revolution. I think that's initially what it was.
Yeah.
We have programs in place that help people that didn't exist, in 1890, 1930.
Right.
I remember listening to a radio interview about elderly and Social Security, and in 1930, if grandma would move in with the children, and there was no Social Security.
No, I know.
There was no help.
It was awful.
Yeah, that's what
It was really awful, and the elders were very, very poverty-struck and huge. You mentioned it was a terrible kind of thing.
Right, back then.
Yeah.
And there's still, so we've made progress in those areas.
Yeah, we want to protect those those gains we've made. There's some people would like. There are people now who might like to do away with Social Security if they could. They would do away with everything that was done by Franklin Roosevelt, for instance. There are people who have that kind of a view and so forth, and the fundamentalist kind of things which are dangerous and you want to guard against. And then it's all collectively for the whole world society has this new kind of challenge, and so it's a really challenging time to be alive and participant when you get to that.
And there's a lot of question from the French and German social systems.
Yeah.
They're looking. The British colonies are doing very well for the past 10 years. And
the ex-British colonies.
And the French and Germans take care of the workers. They have a lot of social welfare stuff, a lot of weeks vacation, and this whole globalization thing those economies compete. There's no word globalization, so that's under threat too.
Yeah, right.
Just like the social service system here is under threat. I mean, they want to privatize Social Security. I don't know.
Yeah, but you have a thing behind, and they're outsourcing things to low-wage places like China and so forth. A lot of the we used to make things in this country. We don't make anything hardly anymore.
That's interesting. Once in a while I think, well, that's scary in a way. I mean, we'll be a country where everyone's going to be a lawyer, everyone's going to be a computer programmer.
Some guy said that. It's so litigious that in 20 years everybody in America is going to be a lawyer, everybody fighting everybody else.
Right, it'd be lawyers, or everyone will work at McDonald's, or we don't manufacture anything.
Well, no, they're manufacturing. Everything's made in China now. They get tremendous amounts going to China. Outsourcing. They're outsourcing to India for a lot of things.
Right.
You talk to people in Bangalore when you talk on the telephone. And then beyond that, Lord Keynes said the technology is going to, because the input, if you take labor on one side, you take labor or human input, intellectual and physical input to the productive process on one side, labor.
Right.
You take the other side, you take all of the non-human inputs, that would be technology and finance and land and patents and resources and all that. You put those two, and it's now increasingly the labor input to the production is less and less relative to these other things, which are capital asset, represented by capital assets, ownership of the technological systems. They're becoming more and more responsible for production. That's all held by a very small group of people at the top. Right. The masses have only a labor relationship in order to work hard. And that thing your grandfather was talking about, if you don't work, you don't eat, that was to avoid parasitism, so that if you're going to work hard and somebody else isn't going to want to work, everybody has to pull their own weight in order to make sure that there's enough. Right. And so that's built into the Buddhist ethic, the Christian ethic. All ethics were built into, and it was readily suited to a situation of scarcity where you didn't want to have people being parasitic upon those who did work hard and create the wealth that could then be distributed. But now it's being created by things other than human labor, and most people have only a labor relationship to production to get income to buy the things that can be made. And Lord Keynes said automated processes, technologically induced unemployment, massive, is going to become characteristic of his grandchildren. He wrote that in 1930. About now, I think that might be the technology is going to be able to be displacing of labor's ability to input to production, and that's the only way most people have to gain an income, is by having what they call a job or a labor relationship, and they have no ownership. Right. So I think that's a real problem. They're going to have to have some sort of an economic system that relates the masses of the people to the way things are actually being produced, rather than having, only a small group of plutocratic owners at the top of society. I don't know. That's just a theme.
But can you have a prosperous economy without much of a manufacturing base?
I don't know.
Because if you look around, M&N and see all the equipment, none of it's American made.
It's all Japanese.
If you go around the stores,
M&N is Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Yeah, that's where you're viewing this on,
Right, and if you look at cameras, televisions, everything, nothing is American made.
It's all made in Asia.
And can you still have a prosperous economy? A high standard of living?
We have a high standard of living.
But
it's being threatened. For increasing numbers of people. People are sinking into poverty more and more, I think, And they had a piece in the New York Times the other day where they said the super rich are becoming so super rich that they're being separated like a whole nother category of human existence from the merely very rich. So you got maybe 20% of the people doing well on the world scale. They're being served very well by the system. All our systems of finance make the rich richer, the powerful more powerful, and nothing is geared to the mass of the human society in a way. And a lot of it is a race to the bottom in a lot of people's minds. And it's unsustainable, because you're going to have people who are going to have the ability to buy what can be produced even by automated systems. So there's a new change needed that's not obvious in terms of our political leaders that we hear on the television and stuff. Seems to me, anyway. Right,
and it's not, and healthcare is under a threat too.
Yeah,
I mean, another odd thing about this country is that it's the only industrialized nation that doesn't have any kind of health insurance.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's crazy. 45 million people who can crawl to the hospital and be told be gone.
And a larger number underinsured.
Yeah, underinsured as well,
I don't know if we could have a system like Britain or Canada. I don't know that much about the economics of medical care. But,
I think,
you know, if you're ill, the first question has to pop into your mind is, do you have insurance?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean,
If not, you can die. They'll just die. And I mean, it's pretty absurd for a civilized situation, isn't it? Yeah, the Clintons tried to get a health care thing, but they never could get it past all the...
Something happened with Hillary.
Yeah, Hillary got overextended, maybe.
She's really worked hard for that.
Yeah, she did indeed, yeah.
Something happened with that, and...
well, the healthcare industry lobbied very hard and rigorously, and then the Republicans, and you know, we get that. Yeah, that's a problem that's really confronting us. Now, listen to you. You're at MNN now, and you're thinking about doing some programming of your own, or you want to help people,
well, I produce.
You got all that experience from movie making, so maybe you'd like to start thinking about doing some editing and some creative side of things.
I produced a show last Friday.
You did? Okay, talk about it. Yeah.
It was a dramatization of Carl Sandburg.
Okay.
I was one actor, and we did a 4-hour taping.
A 4-hour taping?
And hopefully we have 2 or 3 shows out of that.
Uh-huh.
At least 2 shows.
Uh-huh.
And Sandburg was born around 1888, 1967. It was an interesting experience, more than an interesting experience. But quickly, what was interesting was the work of Carl Sandburg, even though some of his, written 50 and 60 years ago.
Yeah.
The content of his work was just as relevant today as it was back then.
I think often that's the case. Don't you? They write for the ages.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, my producing the show was totally unexpected, accidental, and I'd like to do another one. But in the meantime, I'll continue to work on other people's shows.
Yeah, you've been helping me, and I thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're learning.
Yes. So a lot of it's trial and error. There are mistakes made. If you have a sense of humor,
it helps.
It helps a lot.
Can you imagine living without a sense of humor? I think I would die in a moment if I could not laugh at a satirical thing and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's the theater of the absurd we live in, the politics and so forth, to me.
Yeah, I've always had a sense of humor.
Oh, good. Thank God.
I remember in high school, too.
Yeah.
I hope to continue. I want to go back to school. I want to bring...
You said you're thinking of going back to take classes at the university?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to continue. Public access is very, very, very important.
It
very,
is
very
indeed.
important.
I think
the whole idea of it is I remember when I was growing up, it was Channel 13.
Yes.
I remember that. There was 3 local stations. There was 3 networks, 247 and Channel 13, and that was it.
That's it.
There was BAI. Started in the early 60s.
I guess that's right.
Pacifica.
Yeah, Pacifica.
I remember listening to that a lot when we came back to New York in the early 70s from the military high school.
Yes. We could go, probably great stories could come out of your experience at the military. And whole movies could come out of a week at the military academy.
NPR. I listen to a lot of radio now.
Yeah.
But
you do?
I watch television a lot. I'm working in a television medium. I'm listening to a lot of radio. I listen to radio to get the news and like current events. I listen to a lot of NPR and BBC. And there's a difference the way some people say NPR is a little on the liberal side, but it's interesting the way BBC broadcast the news.
Yeah, I was depending on the BBC during all the Iraq nonsense. I mean, I was depending on their reporting. It was far more objective, it seemed to me, the reality than what we were getting. I think we're getting propagandistic stuff.
Right, it's very matter of fact.
It seems that way to me,
Yeah, it's very matter of fact. They don't...
And we get, maybe on Access we get some real stuff. I mean, or at least it's a place for alternative views to be
it's very, very important, public access.
It is indeed, and increasing with each day. It's becoming more important, I think.
Yeah, but there's some questions about it continuing. If something's happening in 2008, I'm not sure.
There's always something around the bend, and there's people that have an interest in it, but it's also linking up with a lot of the people in the computer realm, where you get open source computers and the internet and the use of the internet and the internet. Yeah, we're streaming. This program will be seen, or able to be seen everywhere in the world. It's going to be streamed to the internet. We'll be able to be seen on a computer anywhere in the world. There's going to be more of that. We're going to be having more and more multimedia. And that internet is becoming like a gigantic university of the... It's like some sort of a miracle.
Yeah, when you listen to BBC, they have, I don't think 10 years ago, they had people email in from Australia, from Ghana, Pakistan, you know, France, United States.
Right.
Because they asked them, please email in your comments.
Yeah.
And I don't think they could do that.
They couldn't do it in the past. I mean, you write a letter and you push a button, it's
10
in
years ago.
Peking. It's amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. Younger people may take it for granted, but it's an incredible thing, a resource to have available to you, particularly if you're interested in things, you can go and find out things.
Right.
It's an educational dream to be able to get interesting information that you are interested in at the time. And public access, as far as the people are concerned, and it's available to everybody in a sense. And as far as the people are concerned, public access was there, you know, on the leading edge way back in about 1969 or so. It got started in cable television, and it's a great and important movement. And it teams up with the people in the internet world. It seems to me.
There were people that fought for public access.
Oh yeah.
In the 70s.
Sure.
In the early 80s. I don't know that much about the history of it, but
I know a lot about it.
I know that there was a fight for it.
Yeah.
And there was an interesting, there was an important concept. The cable companies, when they lay their wires, that they're laying their cables and wires over public space.
Yeah, well, well, no, there's a whole thing where people wanted to have a say, and there was a, we just did a program that aired yesterday, I think, but it was that there was the Sloan Commission report they called cable television the medium of abundance.
Right.
And that was precursor to an abundance that is coming now with the internet, so that we may be getting to where we're transcending all these situations of scarcity. That may be a promise, and public access was on the frontier way back when.
Right.
So one of the things you have, even in cable television, however, is you run out of time. We have run out of time for this program. We have. We have. I'm sorry, we've run out of time. So you got time for a couple of sound bites, but thanks, George,
Thank
for
you
coming
for having me, and this has been a very, very interesting and unexpected experience.
All right. Well, it's been your pleasure. Let me remind you to have your pleasure to have the perceptions of George Sotirelis.
Yes.
And he is an autodidact, I would say, reader. He spent a couple of years in a military school as he was coming up, and he's been reading, and he's been watching film, and he's now one of the stalwart producers, technical, learning, getting to be at the stage of creative use of the new communication technology, one of the people that helps make MNN, I would think, and the public access realm, the best place, and it's going to be the most creative place for expression of the human spirit, I think, as we move ahead. So welcome aboard, George. It's really good to see you.
Thank you.
And thanks a lot for coming in. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Harold. It's been interesting and hopefully continued experience.
Yeah, well, and we'll build from here. So we invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again tomorrow, but that's it for this particular program. One more time, George, thanks a lot for coming in and for everything, and all the best as you investigate the possibilities that are out there in front of you now. I think you're going to become a real good filmmaker, don't you? Or
I hope so. We'll have to see the.
I want to see that film, that program you did on.
Yes.
What does it have a title?
Echoes from the Past.
Echoes from the Past.
Right.
And what were you? Were you directing or were you producing?
Oh, I was producing. Gloria Messer was.
Gloria did the directing?
She was directing.
And who was on camera, if I may?
Peter Haywood.
Peter Haywood's an actor?
No, he's another eminent producer.
I see, okay.
On camera.
And they were focusing on Sandberg then, right?
The entire tape was called Sandberg.
Oh, that's good. And you're at the stage of editing now?
Yes.
Isn't it fun? And that equipment's all available to you here, and we should let people who are maybe viewing that if they're interested, they could get in touch with MNN and think about becoming a producer of film and television.
And give it support,
Yeah.
More people that are involved.
Okay.
In Unity, there's